All right. Sorry, we were having some technical difficulties, but we are getting things rolling here. We'll wait a couple minutes as we get folks in. We do have a poll that we will be posting. And if you have any Q&A, feel free to leave comments in the chat, and we'll get going pretty quickly here. There is the poll. So as we're waiting, if you want to fill that out, waiting, fill that out. And like I said, we'll get started here pretty quickly. Another minute or so. Looks like we still have a few people trickling in. I think we should have had some hold music. All right, well, we'll get things going. I'm sure other people will start to filter in. Just some housekeeping things. We do have the ability to ask questions through the chat. My colleague and co-founder Ashley Walsh is managing the chat, so feel free to leave questions there. We'll answer them either along the way if they're kind of pertinent as we go along, or we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A. So we are lucky to have Sabrina Scheerer with us. Sabrina comes from EXP, and we are, let's see here, there we go. Just on the agenda today. So I will run through a quick overview of Scheerer. Then we'll have a little bit of Q&A with Sabrina. And then Sabrina is going to walk us through a little bit of her process. So really, we're going to talk through kind of what it's like to kind of some of the problems she was trying to solve with Scheerer, and kind of the importance of setting up a process and systems for agents and teams. And we'll talk about a little bit about agent and team adoption, as well as client communication. So let's get started. So Scheerer really is a platform where we're bringing everybody around the transaction together. So it's really a platform that brings clients, agents, and vendors into one system. And the idea behind Scheerer is really that it's great for project management, for teams and individual agents, for managing that whole transaction experience. But if you think about the real value proposition of what Scheerer is, right, when you think about creating a streamlined process and creating a enhanced client communication experience, what you're ultimately doing is creating a process where clients feel like they are communicated to, vendors and other stakeholders really kind of have this engaged transaction experience. And from a client standpoint, what you're really doing is creating a great client experience, which thus creates better referral opportunities. And I think we can all agree that at the end of the day, if we can walk somebody through that transaction process, which can be a headache sometimes, right, for people who have not done it, or if things go, if there are hiccups, but if you can create a really great client experience, and ultimately the value proposition for Scheerer is that we're really creating lifelong referral opportunities. So if we think about, we do have individual agents that use Scheerer, but we're really kind of focused around that team concept. And so really what we're bringing together is not only great client experiences, but the ability to collaborate as a team within a platform. And so, and I think one of the important things, and Sabrina may agree with me as we continue on the conversation with her, is not only is it important to have the client and the agent on the same page, but when you're working as a team, it's really important for that internal communication to make sure that everybody who is involved with that transaction knows what's going on. And so really we're bringing everybody together, but it's really around how to create communication experiences, both externally and internally. So how do we do it? So really, at its core, Scheerer is about project management, right? So we have the ability to create automated tasks, send emails out based on triggers, and really bring in all of the experiences from a document standpoint, tasks management, and communication. A good example is a task, like let's say you want to create it for every deal, right, that we've got a listing on, we've got to deliver lockbox and signs, and we've got to get that delivered. You could set a task reminder for 2 days before the listing date for an admin or the agent to deliver the lockbox and signs. Agent delivers delivers the signs, clicks the task that it's done, and now everybody on that team knows, hey, okay, that task is done. Now we can move on to the next thing, right? And so creating easy automations for things that you normally have a manual checklist or something like that, that's really where the power of Scheerer comes in. We also have the ability to manage communication. So if you notice an underlying theme, it's really around how do you keep everybody communicated with. And so how we do that is we integrate with your email inbox, and we allow you to sync that inbox. And so any communication between a client and an agent, or a client and a team, is stored within Scheerer. Anybody can access that and reply from that. And the nice thing about the way that we do that is that it's literally synced to your Gmail or your Outlook. And so there's no funky email address that you have to CC, or there's no email that comes out that looks like it's coming from a system. It literally looks like it's coming from your inbox. It stores in your sent or your inbox, or sent folder, or your inbox. And all of that lives within Scheerer as well. So it really is a collaborative place where anybody can come in and see the communication. We also have the ability to share calendars. So you can, within Scheerer, you can have a calendar view that shows you all of the important dates, all of the important contact dates. So home anniversaries, client birthdays, but also big dates around the transaction. So appraisals, inspections, things like that. And then you can share that calendar out to your personal calendar. So you can link that to your Google Calendar, your Outlook calendar, your iCal, whatever you use from a calendaring system. So you can push all of those dates from Scheerer out to your personal calendar, so you can manage it the way that you want to. The other thing that a lot of our teams and agents use is the client portal. So again, we talk about how do you enhance client communication and how do you make it streamlined. So the Scheerer client portal allows you to show things like the timeline view of the transaction. They have an easy way to see who's working on that transaction with you. So they could literally click on Phil Dunphy's name, his email and his phone number would pop up, and they could message you right from the app. But it also allows clients to see documents and upload documents. So it really is a kind of one-stop shop from a client experience as well, where clients can see everything that's going on, and they feel like they are in the know with all of these opportunities within the client portal. We also have the ability to show preferred vendors in the client portal. So you can share which vendors. So let's say you've got mortgage lenders that you work with that you want to show up in the client portal in the vendor directory, or you've got things like after the inspection, you've got handyman or contractors that need to take care of some of that work. All of that can be shown in the client portal so they can see and contact those folks right there. So you don't have to send text messages back and forth or send a PDF of like, here's all my list of contacts. It's in a nice, easy way for your clients to access that. So we kind of talked about the kind of project management, the communication, the client portal, but really the third aspect of Scheerer is really around team management. And so we have some enhanced advanced reporting functionality that allows you to set not only goals for the team, but you can also set individual agent goals, and then you can track those metrics as you go along. So, you know, how many buying and selling deals does our team have in the pipeline? How many have we closed this quarter? How many have we closed this month? And then you can even look at things like transaction by sources. So, you know, are our referrals going up? Are our Facebook ads doing better than, you know, our cold calls? So you can see all of those metrics within our enhanced reporting. So when you talk about really that team management piece, we've got a lot of functionality around that as well. And then finally, one of the most important things that I think our clients or our customers appreciate is this idea that Scheerer really is a platform, and that a lot of things can be done within Scheerer, so you don't have to go back and forth within systems. So we know that there are a lot of systems that people use, whether it's for client broker compliance or document signature. So we integrate with a lot of those products. So Dotloop, DocuSign, we're actually working on our SkySlope integration right now. And really the idea behind all of this is that we want to eliminate the data redundancy, right? Where you have to enter data into one system, go back into another system. Sabrina can talk about that. We were talking about our SkySlope integration and the ability to push data from Scheerer back into SkySlope and then pass those documents back and forth. Really alleviates that idea of like, okay, now I've got to go put this into 3 different systems. And so as you think about the platform that Scheerer is and is going to continue to evolve around, is really this one-stop shop where you can access all of the tools that you normally use, but you can do it in a simplified manner. So that is a quick overview of Scheerer. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will welcome Sabrina in. Sabrina, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm great.
Awesome. Well, so let's start with just a little background on kind of your experience in the real estate industry. You're with EXP, but give us a little bit more
Sure.
in terms of your experience and background.
Sure, absolutely. So I got my real estate license initially in 2012 in Georgia. Military spouse. So after a little bit, we went overseas and then we came to Kansas. So I got my real estate license here in Kansas in the beginning of 2019. And oddly enough, things just really started flying in 2020. And I started building a team. I really started it at the fall of 2020 and then actually started adding team members in 2021.
Awesome. So what were you using? So you use Scheerer now. What were you using prior to Scheerer, and kind of what was the problem you were looking to solve as you were looking to switch systems?
Sure. So I used pre-close before I went to Scheerer, and before that I used Folio. And I know most agents are at least somewhat familiar with those 2 names. We switched from Folio to pre-close because the automation on pre-close was more robust, templated emails and things like that, where the checklist, Folio is a lot more limited. And then at the beginning of this year, we got an email saying that pre-close was shutting down. And so I had to start looking for something else. And we tried spreadsheets and and all kinds of different things to keep the team. I've had a transaction coordinator for ages, pretty much all along. So even just between the 2 of us and then adding team members just got more cumbersome with just making sure that that the process was very consistent regardless of which agent was doing which, was very important to me. So anyway, I knew I would need something. I couldn't just scrap it and go without. And I looked through everything I could find. My biggest needs or problems to be solved was I wanted something the client could see. I wanted something on the client side, not just emails. I wanted at least a timeline at a minimum that they could log in somewhere and look at any given time. More than that was a bonus, but that was my minimum requirement. And I wanted checklists that all my agents or any agent working on that transaction could see what tasks were still to be done, what had been completed, the timeline, the dates, things were happening, you know, when our inspection, our repair request was due and things like that. Again, just to keep the process and the client experience very, very consistent all along. And I weighed a ton of products. I actually even had somebody tell me, when I said I wanted something that the client could look at, an app or a website or something they could log in and see some details, they told me that doesn't exist. But Scheerer pretty much checked all my check boxes, and I'm still learning more stuff that it could do that is a bonus. So
awesome. So as let's talk kind of systems and process. What is the importance of creating a streamlined process for teams? And what are some of the things that you found valuable over your experience as both running teams and as an agent?
So I may answer it a different way.
Yeah.
So we all have our brokerages. Everybody on this call is with a brokerage, and that brokerage has its process that they want you to do. They have the specific documents that they want you to put somewhere for document storage, and they have their own checklist in some form or fashion. Ours is on SkySlope, where we have specific slots we need to fill out with our documents. But they don't have any of the personal touches. And from the very beginning, I was very customer service, client service oriented. And I wanted to make the process as pleasant and enjoyable for the client as possible. And there's tons of stress in any real estate transaction for everybody, or potentially could be. And I wanted to make it as little of that as possible, as enjoyable as an experience as possible. And so I have personally all these little touches that are woven throughout that process. But in order for client A's experience to look like client C's experience, I need a way to keep up with that. And I'm juggling enough balls that my brain is not reliable enough to make sure all those things happen every single time. So that's the systems and processes. It's important to have something reliable that doesn't change, that's not going to forget, that's always going to make sure every single one of those check boxes is marked. And I have personally found, especially when managing multiple people, but even just me, or just me and a transaction coordinator, we're human. There's a lot of human error. That's just life, right? So to have a checklist that's always the same, to have an automated email or a template that's always the same, just really prevents those human errors and make sure that level of service stays consistent, even when you're super busy, even when you're exhausted, even with everything seems to be falling apart. You don't have to rely on your own energy and your own brain to remember all those. So, and that's what was important for me. And again, the more people you have involved, the more margin there is for error.
Gotcha. Awesome.
So.
Perfect. I'm going to pause right now. If you do have questions, the Q&A is open, and then that way everybody can see the question. So if you want to post questions, post in the Q&A, and then also we'll answer those along the way, just as a quick aside. So getting back to kind of the process, what are some things that team leaders, agents kind of overlook when kind of thinking about the process? Are there things that we're like, you make it too simple, you over-engineer it? Like, what are some things that you should be thinking about if you don't have a process already, or if you're trying to kind of refine the process that you do have?
That's a good one. I can only say for me, the things that we really found we needed to clean up were, so we got really specific. We got nitty gritty. So I have in my checklist, send the repair request to the buyers for signatures, and then send the repair request to the sellers for signatures. And then a couple days later, follow up with the seller's agent, if I'm coming from the buyer side. So I really broke those things down because I found that just having complete repair requests, that again left a lot of margin for error or for forgetting something that might need to happen and letting it slip through the cracks, especially when you have those dates, the really important dates. I really built out the dates. When it's not necessarily as date dependent, it might be a little less specific. But I have things like I send a thank you card to every agent on the other side of a transaction. So I have that in my checklist because it's too easy to forget who did I send that to yet and who have I not sent it to yet.
Right.
So I would just say you think through your transaction, think through what you're doing now. If you're trying to build this out and put everything somewhere on a Google Doc or something, just list it all out. Every step, and then think through those steps and think, are there sub steps? Are there smaller steps that go with that, right? Like the inspection thing. And do I need to list all those small steps, or does it all kind of happen together? And maybe you don't need to, but think through all that and get it all listed out. The beauty of this is that when you have everything listed out and consistent and you've gone through it a few times, it's easier to see what's not working. Well, I'm not getting any response from that thing that I do. Or it doesn't really matter. It's just extra work. And then you can eliminate it, or you can see spots where you can add in another step to make the process better. But when you're just kind of doing it on brain power, you're not going to be able to see those patterns. So I would just say, list everything you currently do, everything that's required, anything that you add in, any interim steps that need to happen as part of that, and then build that and observe it for a few transactions, but always be open to adjusting.
No, I like that. And especially with your like inspection thing, like breaking down like the follow-up, right? Like the follow-up is the hard part, right? I think it's very easy to say, get the inspection report or whatever it is, but then it's the follow-up, and that's the stuff that falls through the cracks. And I think that's the stuff that is the important stuff, right?
Right. And that's where you miss a deadline because you didn't follow up with the seller's agent, or you didn't, whatever it is, that's where I found we were having some issues and causing some extra stress that wasn't necessary, is just missing those little interim steps, or just not remembering that we needed to double check back on that thing. What I also love is that you can add a task in Scheerer. So I've been using that a lot. So I have my pre-templated checklist, but if we need to amend something in the transaction, I add a step that says, send that amendment to the other agent, get that amendment back from the other agent, so that I'm reminding myself, and it really relieves a lot. It relieves a lot of, I wake up in the middle of the night a lot less now than I used to, thinking, oh crap, did I forget that thing? So thank you for letting me sleep.
That's awesome. We're gonna put that on a sticker. Thank you for letting me sleep.
It's very true.
So let's kind of switch gears a little bit. So talking about the kind of process, right? So as you're building a process, who should own the process, right? If you think about the team lead, I know a lot of team leads have admins or TCs or things like that. And we work with a lot of TCs within teams or with another agent, right? But what does the team leader do? How does the admin work within creating that process? And how do you kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page?
Sure. So for me, I own that process. exclusively. Now, I haven't had a TC for a year. So I did have one for quite a while, and then the team built, anyway, long story, won't have to go there, but I don't currently have one. I exclusively own this process. There's room for input, but this is my process. This is the team's process. And I expect the team to follow the process because I've tested these things and they work. Again, that doesn't mean I'm not open to suggestions, but too many cooks in the kitchen, you know, or my husband likes to say the good idea fairy. She really wrecks things pretty badly. So we have to be careful about that. If you do have a TC, especially if your TC is running almost all of your back end systems, then the TC it might make sense for the TC to own that, but I would say then that needs to be like a 50-50 ownership with the team leader, or a 70-30 with the TC making 70% of the decisions, but the team leader definitely still needs to have the oversight. Ultimately, it's the team's reputation or the brokerage's reputation, right? So my opinion is that the team leader owns that, or potentially joint owns it with the TC, with a system for allowing input and suggestions from your team, because you certainly want them to feel heard. And they might have a great point or something that you're missing. But again, you don't want to let too many cooks in the kitchen, or you're never going to have a solid system.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's move on. You talked a lot about the client communication piece, and that was really important in creating a unified experience from client A to client B to client C. So what are some, like, how do you think about that client communication throughout the transaction process? Like how do you enhance that to make sure it is a really good experience? And what are the things that you're doing and that you found work for that client communication piece?
Sure. So previously, and I have a lot that I still want to build out in my client communication side. But previously it was basically just emails. I mean, I had a series of emails I sent at different stages to follow up. They were templated, so all the information that people needed were in them, and that worked. I love Shcheerer's client app, and my clients seem to really love it. So I put all their documents in there, even though it's a little bit of a double right now for me, and I can't wait until the Sky Slope stuff is ready.
Yes.
I'm very anxious. But I put their documents there so they have them readily accessible. Even though they sign in and they get their copy, but I put everything there as well. We use the timeline. I use the vendor list. I love the vendor list. It's fantastic. And one thing that was pointed out to me when I first started with Scheerer is they can keep that app. It doesn't expire or go away. So they can log in a year later when they're looking for a painter or somebody to do floors and go through your vendor list there. So that's fabulous. Another thing I'm going to start using the document section for is putting tip sheets and I was going to say utility information, but I have that in my vendor list now. So but just other useful information that's not pertaining to the transaction specifically, but something that would be handy for them to have easy access to. So I'm going to start putting a lot of our handouts and, the folder you hand to the buyer when you go on showings.
Yep.
That's all going to go in that document section. Not that I won't give them hard copies sometimes as well, but it's an easy way for them to find it again later. So
yeah.
So that's what I'm finding on the client communication side, and I'm still using the templated emails. I haven't delved into the text messaging or the automated texting yet, but I am going to eventually, and I'm excited about that too. So there's a ton of potential there. Just whatever you want that client communication to look like, there's probably a way to do it, and again, make it consistent.
Yeah. So talking, kind of going a little bit further, what do you think the expectation is now in terms of clients, right? You hear about like the Uber experience and, I mean, even Domino's has a tracker where you can track your pizza, right? Like there's this kind of consumerized experience that's happening because of the technology that's available today. So what do you think clients are looking for from an agent in that buying process and in that in the selling process throughout the transaction? And yeah, what are their expectations, and has that expectation changed over the course of the last several years with a lot of this kind of, again, this consumerized experience? It seems to be exploding everywhere else.
I haven't really thought about it from that perspective. But I should. So my clients are a little bit unique in that I work almost only with military, not purposely, but that's my niche. Most of my clients are military families. Many of them aren't here and can't be here physically to go house hunting. So we do a ton of virtual stuff. And I really haven't looked at it from that perspective, but it makes sense because that's sort of what I was already giving them.
Yeah.
I think nobody has said anything to me that would track along that line of thinking. So I don't know if their expectations have really changed or not. Or now I also joke that we live in 1995 here in the middle of Kansas. And while my people are all coming in from elsewhere, we're pretty behind the times here. So that may be an influencer of people have just learned to lower their expectations on that kind of automated modern, methodology. But I would say it sure isn't going to hurt to be working on those types of things.
But so on the flip side of that, do you think that helps you stand out when people are like, wow, she's really on it and I've got everything I need right here? Does that help you
I hope
set yourself
so.
apart as an agent?
I hope so. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know what? One thing I've gotten is a lot more reviews
Okay.
since using Shcheerer. I can't explain that except for that I blast them email as soon as we close, but
well, and that's that automation piece, right? Of like,
yeah.
I can forget to send the thank you note, but if I've got it automated, now I can send that, and that's actually a pretty good proof point, right? Like some of those things probably fall by the wayside because all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've got to go on to the next transaction, but that automation helps you kind of move that piece along.
Right. So, I mean, that's like a side note, but I'm wondering if because I've already got them on an app and I've already got them kind of doing those things, then it just comes naturally to click the link that I send for that. But I don't know. I don't know if the Uber type mentality is affecting real estate, but I would say that if it isn't yet, it will. And we should probably all prepare for that.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so I know you're going to walk through, I don't want to go too far over. So I know you're going to walk through a little bit of how you use Shcheerer. And I'll say, obviously, I think you're just going to share a sample, so you don't share any client information or anything like that. So, but yeah, kind of walk us through how you use it and some important things that you use within the system.
Okay, sure. So my plan was just to walk through kind of a buyer side transaction as far as setting up a new transaction and what my checklist and stuff look like. So I'm in my Shcheerer, and under deals is where you're going to go to set up a transaction. I am eventually going to use this throughout the process from I'm thinking about buying to I'm buying, but I don't have all of those steps quite built out yet. So I will walk everyone through what I do have. So you click new deal. And here you can choose what stage you're going to want them in. If you have automated emails and things set up, they will automatically start once the person enters one of these stages. I don't, so I'm going to go ahead and put us under new contract. And you can enter your contact right here. And enter their contact. Here you can choose the agent that's going to be using. So you could put in a different buyer's agent and then your team leader. So you can have both on the transaction. Some of this is things I've built out and the way it looks for me. So it's going to look different for each each agent and how you have this set up.
Yeah, and I'll just say in that, in the different stages, you can customize.
You
the
can
different things
customize,
that you
yep.
want to show up, yep.
Everything, which is fabulous. You can change almost anything in here to make it work for you. So I have a really basic file set up for the transaction. So you're going to go through each of these and put in your addresses. You can put in a photo of the property. And if you hadn't already, you can invite the contact to the client portal. You can also do that when you're setting up the transaction. The way I do it just depends on where I'm putting them and where we're at. I don't like to invite them until I have as much of the details as I can fill in on this. Just because it's easier if they get it. I think it looks better if they get it and it's all filled out rather than if they get it and then it's empty and then they go back later and it's filled out. They might not be as motivated to continue checking if it doesn't look robust at that initial view. So I wait until I kind of come in here and put in more of the information. On this left side, you're going to put the listing agent, the lender, the title. You've got all these different, I have the home inspector, the radon inspector. Again, this is all customizable. And these are, I'm pretty sure, Chris, they can see all of these people on this side.
Yeah,
On
so
theirs,
when they log into their, either into the web version or the app, they can see everybody who's associated with that transaction.
Right. And so they can at a glance see their home inspector and that person's information, for example. And then they have access to this timeline, which this one's not filled out because I didn't go put all those details in yet, but they can see when their inspection is, when their earnest money is due, when their inspection contingency date ends, those types of things. And then you can put your documents here. What I discovered is you can only, if you push this one, you can only upload one thing at a time. But if you drag and drop, you can upload multiple documents at one time.
Yep. We'll have to make batch uploading available. We'll put that on the to-do list.
I mean, or just drag and drop.
Or just drag and drop.
Or just drag and drop. But it does work if you drag and drop. It took me a little bit to figure that out, that it was different, but it does work. And then this is where I spend most of my time, is here in the tasks. Now, all of these tasks are also going to show up in your dashboard. I'm not going to click on my dashboard because that would give you a whole lot of personal information that I don't necessarily want to share with everybody who may be on this call, but they will all appear in your dashboard along with all the upcoming dates, inspection dates, contingency dates, all of those things. And it kind of shows where you're at, where your pipeline is, sales volume, things like that are pending. So in this checklist, this is what I live by. Honestly, not sure how I functioned before. So, and then I have, this is just a tip. So there are templated emails right here. If you go into the email and then you can use templates. And the people at Scheerer are really great about helping you set this up. Just go ahead and use that service. It's totally worth it. I sat on this for like 2 months before I finally was like, just help me do it. So what I did is on my checklist, I said, use buyer one email. And then I labeled them that way. So just a tip, put something on there so you don't have to think about it. And then you just check these off and they disappear. And if you accidentally check one off, because I do that all the time, they're right here under completed. This will turn red. This will turn green on the day it's due, and then it'll turn red if it's late. I also, let me see. So right here, I put things in here for the clients. They have a checklist on their end. They can't see all of these things. They can only see the things you've assigned to them. And I assign them things like, okay, so in our area, we don't do earnest money until the contract's accepted and then it goes to the title company. So I say, I have it in their checklist to make sure they get their earnest money to the title company. I have it in their checklist to complete any information the lender needs. I have in their checklist to discuss with their agent repair requests or discuss repair requests with their agent after the inspection. So they actually have their own checklist of things to do. Change the utilities is in here. It's not a long checklist, but I do include things that I want the buyers or the sellers to do on there, and it shows up in their app. You can also add a task. So if there's something different or random about this transaction, you can add a task. You can assign it to anybody involved in the transaction, put a due date, a time. So you can actually customize this as needed for each individual transaction. So for me, we have a new contract. I start with this, I get through as much of this list as I can, and then I move them over to inspection period. And it's going to ask me a whole bunch of details that it needs for my templates, which we're going to ignore. And again, that's all customizable. And then it's going to add to my checklist. So there are things here that weren't here, like the inspection resolution wasn't in here until I move it over to inspection period. And then it just continues on. And so for me, I have new contract, inspection period, appraisal, pre-closing, and post-closing. And I don't archive my transaction until I have completed everything, because there are some things I do after closing to kind of follow up and make sure they're doing okay and settling in and just show that I care. Because I never want anybody to feel like I got my commission check and fell off the face of the earth. I try not to let people feel like dollar signs. So yeah, I think you can set it up to automatically archive when it closes, or
Yeah.
there's a thing that asks you if you want to archive it. I don't, because I want to make sure I followed through on all those tasks after closing. So again, completely customizable. If there's something you're looking to do, there's probably a way to do it. Anything else you want me to touch on in here, Chris, while I'm showing this? I kind of did it real quick.
Yeah,
for
no,
time's
that
sake.
I think that's good. And I would also point out that you can also set up a lot of those email templates to fire based on dates or when it goes into deal stages or things like that. So
Right.
some of that can happen automatically. Otherwise, you can set it up as individual tasks and send them out. So it's definitely personal preference on that.
Right. And I fully intend to have, so my congratulations email talks about setting up inspections and dropping off earnest money. And I intend to have that eventually set to where as soon as they go in that new contract phase, it sends them that email and I don't have to do anything. I'm just a little bit of a type A control freak. And so I'm just making sure that everything is just exactly perfect before I trust the bot to do it for me.
Yep.
But
Nope. And we get a lot of folks like that, right? Like as you, because it's your, your brand, your
Right.
client, you want to make sure that experience is good. And that's why we have the ability to send both one-off or automatically. And I think that's the beauty of a system where you can still create a task, send that out, or you can have it sent automatically. So,
right. And that's why I talked about, build out your basic system, because then you'll see, oh, I could automate that and speed that process up, or I could add to this. I could start doing text messages, things like that, that once the basic is down and you're not having to use your brain for every little step of that, you can start thinking about other ways to improve. So it's always adjustable.
awesome. All right. Well, thank you for running us through that. We do have some questions that I can answer through, and I might share my screen. I'm going to jump into Shcheerer because there are some folks who have specific questions. So let me start that. And the first question, does Shcheerer have buildable and interactive dashboards? We do have the ability to create some custom, of course, my Shcheerer is going to not let me log out. Give me one. I love doing this on the fly. Yeah, so we do have the ability to add widgets to the dashboard. So you can choose which kind of widgets you want on that dashboard. And that will then show up for your kind of use case there. Let me see if I can log in now. There we go. All right, now I can share my screen. So in the dashboard view, and I know you didn't want to show your dashboard, but this is where you can see kind of your pipeline of all activity. Here you have the ability to add custom widgets. And so you can show, active buying deals, selling deals, the number of closed deals. You can see kind of what pipeline looks like by volume, the volume closed. So it does have the ability to customize this dashboard with our new reporting functionality. And then from a reporting standpoint, this is where you can choose to have the different commissions or the volumes, the more interactive dashboards from reporting functionality from there. Wayne asked, I'm also with EXP, how's the integration of SkySlope? So we are working on that one right now. Sabrina was nice enough to run us through her instance of SkySlope. So I will say that we're actively building that. And Sabrina, we actually, to you, you'll be excited. We actually have a lot of that built out right now, where we have the ability to pass data back and forth, and then we're working on the documents. So that functionality is starting to get built out, and that should be, I hate promising dates, but probably in the next kind of 4 to 8 weeks, that will be completed. So Wayne, that is going, so hopefully that answers your question. Ashley asked about texting ability. So yeah, so in the, much like you can set up those email templates that Sabrina showed you, you can also set up SMS messages. And so the way that this works is you can create these templates, you can drop in, like, let's say we didn't know this title company, you can put in title company name, or if you work with multiple title companies, you can drop in that. And then I think part of your question was, it doesn't go through your phone, so you can actually set up a number in the system, and it will send out that text message via that number. And so it won't blow up your phone when you're sending out messages, but all of those messages are then stored within Scheerer as well. Can the ask for review post-closing be sent via text? Yes, you can actually, so you could set up a text message that's, so you could say, hi, first name, or I can't spell, or working with us, we are excited to have in your new home. You and then you could put a link in there. So you could drop that link in on the review page. Like if you have a agent profile or something like that, you could drop the link in there, and then that can automatically be sent out. So yes, that can happen via text. That can also happen via email. So depending on, how your clients want that. And then from a deal stage standpoint, so like on the closed, you could have an action here where we could set that triggered SMS to the buyer. You could use that closing or that review template, and then you could say 7 days after the closing date. So that would then send out 7 days after the closing date, and that text message would be automatically sent out. So let's see, other questions. The Scheerer app built out templates. We do have some built out templates, but as Sabrina mentioned, we also have the ability, we have a concierge service, which will help you get onboarded. So if you do have email templates that you already use, we can import those into the system. But we do have some kind of pre-built templates as well. We also have on the Scheerer website, we also have the ability to look at some of the templates that we have built. So you can see some of the pre-built templates we have, and you can literally just copy and paste those templated emails into your account as well. Are there any other questions that I haven't gotten to? It doesn't look like it. All right. Well, Sabrina, I definitely appreciate you joining us. I know you're still scratching the surface kind of how you're using Scheerer, but like, do you have any other kind of tips or tricks or anything that you're looking forward to using within Scheerer as you continue to figure this all out?
What I'm working on now is building out an entire buyer portal. So again, I think I mentioned I'm going to get them in there as soon as they express interest in buying a house, and then use those documents to give them helpful information, and use email templates to send videos and things like that to kind of move them through that process in a more streamlined way. So I'm looking forward to how that can help. And then also, starting to delve into the automation, the automated emails and text messages a little more. I will just throw out that for anybody else who's joining, a new client, new user, use the Scheerer school, definitely do that. And then use the concierge service. It's completely worth it. It will help to dig into all those things that I'm barely scratching the surface on. So
that's awesome. No, well, thank you again. I appreciate the time. Yes, there will be a recording that we will send out to anybody who's registered. Sabrina, thank you again. I appreciate the time. You've been awesome, and I can't wait to show you the SkySlope integration once we get more of that built.
Very excited.
All right. Well, thank you again. We'll send out the recording. Otherwise, we'll go have some lunch or do whatever you've got to do this afternoon. Thank you again, Sabrina. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.